Imagine a world where healthcare data isn't locked away in silos, but we can use it for something good. It sounds great in theory, but how do we clean up all this critical data to do something meaningful with it without wasting months or possibly years of resources or compromising on security and privacy? With me today on the show are Greg Miner and Guy Tsafnat from Evidentli. And in this episode, we talk about the differences between data federation and data aggregation and why it matters. What are the key elements needed to make data federation a reality, and how data federation is shaping global initiatives in healthcare and what's on the horizon. Collaboration starts with the conversation, Team HealthTech. Let's make it happen. This is Talking HealthTech with me, Peter Birch, featuring content and community about technology in healthcare. So, gents, how you going?
Good.
Thanks, buddy.
Good.
Coming by.
Yeah, thanks for setting us up in this nice room, allow me to come over and have a chat about Evidentli. Maybe let's kick us off. Firstly, introduce yourselves and what you do within the organisation. Then we can go a bit more about what Evidentli is. Did you want to start?
Yeah, okay. My name's Guy. I'm the technical founder at Evidentli. Evidentli is based on the research that I've been doing since 2006 at UNSW and Macquarie. 2018, we've started to look outside the university. That is their interest in this technology and what we were working on. And there was. So in 2019, we decided to take this to the market. Well, Greg and the commercial arm of the company, to make it a company. Yeah, from then, you want to...
So hi, Greg, co-founder and CEO, and I look after the boring business side of the company. Yes, I met Guy in 2018, and he had this really interesting piece of technology that I thought was pretty amazing. And Guy was saying he wanted to turn it into a company, and we got to know each other and decided to. And as it turns out, we have a common friend, that I did my master's with, and he's Guy's childhood friend. So there's some kind of history there that we weren't even aware about when we started the company. Yeah, we kind of went from there. So it's been a pretty fun time since then.
Yeah. Well, should we go a little bit more about what the technology is, or did you want to give a bit more context about the journey leading up? What makes more sense? Because we've mentioned this interesting technology.
Well, why don't we explain what that is, and then kind of talk to you a bit about how we got to where we are today. So I'll probably start with it, and then for the real tech people, Guy can pitch in. The really techie audience members that want to really understand how it works. So you can think about what we do as it's kind of a next generation data platform. So we have a whole bunch of artificial intelligence, and not just kind of one algorithm that's been trained, but there's dozens of them that can take the really messy clinical data, including the unstructured and uncoded data that exists in clinical systems, and turn it into OMOP. And we can do this really, really quickly and with really high accuracy. So we guarantee 99% precision, meaning 99% accuracy with AI. The lowest we've ever seen is 99.7. We're 50 to 100 times faster than it would be today. So if you were to try to turn all of a hospital's data, let's say a single hospital, into OMOP, so you can and OMOP allows you to query it and structure it and analyze it and things like that. That would be a multi-year journey. And with us, it would be a multi-week journey.
For those that are keeping score or interested, OMOP I know exists within the Talking HealthTech glossary of terms on our website, but for those that are listening in or watching, what's OMOP again?
OMOP is the open way to represent data. So if you think about FHIR is a message, it's the envelope. OMOP is in what's inside the envelope. So it's kind of the open standard to represent clinical data. Yeah. Whereas FHIR is the open standard that's a message.
Yeah. You mentioned it would be a multi-year journey in the way it's done before. How is it possible to have such a vast difference? Like, how was it done before? And like you mentioned, AI gets involved in this technology.
So, it was done before, firstly by transforming coded data, which is the easy part, and even that would be a several month process typically. And then the hard part is the unstructured data. So you would need to have someone go in and read each cell, and then understand, or each term or each piece of text, and understand what that meant within the context of the patient record, and then code it appropriately.
Because unstructured data is just people writing stuff in fields where they're not supposed to.
They are supposed to, to be honest with you, because EMRs are designed for clinicians to get a view of the patient's history in a way that's easily consumable for them. And they're designed to be customized and configured. So each hospital, each ward, each unit has their own view because they look at their patients their own unique way. And that has historically, and still does, and it makes a lot of sense, allows them to type. And it allows them to type a sentence, maybe two, to describe something that's actually really clinically important, or a couple of things. The problem is that turning that sentence into stuff that's actually usable and queryable has, up until today, been really, really, really hard. And Guy and Enrico and the team at the Institute and the Center developed this technology that's just extraordinary.
Well, maybe that might be a good segue into diving in that next layer about the technology and what's involved there, Guy.
When we first started to look into actual data in 2010, into actual patient data, we noticed that there's a lot of data that's missing, a lot of data that's misrepresented in how it's done. A lot of shorthand, a lot of almost like secret code that doctors use. The work we had to do to really make sense of it was enormous. I'm the kind of person who does something three times at most. And if it's more than 3 times, I automate it. We started to look in how to automate this. What came out was actually quite impressive at the time, even. And we've been developing it further for a broader range of data. What we noticed initially, trying to use the state-of-the-art of machine learning that was at the time, machine learning can get it quite well, right? Quite well. But what any machine learner will tell you is, to get to 70%, you just throw some data at a machine learning, you get 70% accuracy. It's done. You work on this for a year, you get to maybe 80%. And then you work on it for another year, you're getting to 81%.
Right.
It just doesn't get there. And these are not numbers that are good enough for medicine, quite honestly. So we needed to take a different approach. The time where we started to look at, okay, the problem is that we're trying to use the same machine learning algorithm to resolve diagnoses, right? And that didn't make sense to us. So we started to divide that into smaller chunks, and then smaller chunks again, smaller chunks again. Every department in every hospital has its own way of writing things, and so smaller things again, smaller data sets again, until we got to the point was, okay, how many data sets are there going to be here? And now we need to automate that. So we started to automate the segmentation, and then choosing the right machine learning and training the right machine learning for that segment of the data. That creates, in a typical, say, something like an LHD or HHS, this would be thousands of segments of data that come from different hospitals and different systems. And so that becomes unmanageable to do manually. And so the automation of this entire process allows us to to build 1,000 machine learning algorithms specific for each customer. That's
right.
And that's what gets us that precision. And like Greg said, we guarantee 99%, but we've never really seen it in a real data set. We've seen only much higher. People, again, this is based on the literature, but people will do this between 80% and 94, 96%.
If a human did it, then that's right. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, and we do it at 99%, so it might sound, well, it's a couple more percent. What's the big deal? Well, it's actually the difference between 94% and 99%, 6 times better. It's 1/6 the errors compared to that. So if we make a prediction about a particular scribble that is, say, a drug name, then there's a 99% chance probability that it's correct. As when people do it, it's 1 in 5 to, say, 1 in 7. If it's 1 in 7, it's not good enough. This is where this not good enough notion comes in. If it's 1 in 7, you have to manually verify. You can't trust the AI.
And we have a much lower tolerance for any errors in technology compared to a human making.
I think in generally medicine, evidence-based medicine is built on small increments. We don't need evidence to show us that it's better to jump off a plane with a parachute than it is without. You don't need an experiment to show you that. But we sometimes do need to see that, the latest drug is maybe a little bit better than the old one, and it's worth doing. It's worth using. It's this low increments that are kind of defining, or at least staples of evidence-based medicine. And so to do that, that's to see those little effects. This is where you need this high precision.
A way to maybe describe how this stuff works in common terms is generative AI has just taken off, right? And everyone really understands what it is. Actually, we do have generative AI, and it's almost kind of next generation, if you think. So generative AI today, LLMs and the such create either software code or language. Essentially, that's what it generates.
Mm-hmm.
Our AI generates more AI. So that makes sense. So our AI, we have a bunch of governing algorithms that look at something and say, okay, this is the best way to approach it. Let's go create a bunch of machine learning models. And then we build models on the fly and learn from data as you present it to us.
If I was a hospital executive, would I know that this thing exists? Like, how does it, like, this sounds very like useful and clever and everything, but then I guess that's where you come in, Mr. Like, to be able to take the technology, this really clever technology, but actually make it usable in a hospital setting and commercialize and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, right now we kind of began our go-to-market in earnest about 9 to 12 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
COVID clearly slowed things down because no one was going to go out and buy stuff from a little startup, regardless of how cool it sounded. And people weren't really focused on analytics at that point anyway. Yeah. So, how are we expanding? Mostly through word of mouth, just through kind of network and people we know. That's starting to accelerate a fair bit. Yeah, I mean, and the market has arrived, right? Which is kind of why, I guess, what we're talking about today, which is, federated data, right? So that's federated data requires a common standardized data set.
I want to talk about federated data in a second, but you mentioned, the people that you know, and I think that it's worth calling out that, you look on your website at the advisory board and the people you've worked with, it's some pretty well-established and well-known people within this space in Australia. So
Enrico Quer is one of our founders.
Yeah.
Graham Grieve is on the team. Paul Galazio, who's one of the co-inventors of evidence-based medicine. Louis Shaper's on the team. And then globally, Ken Mandel, who runs the computational health informatics program at Harvard's on the team. Blackford Middleton, where he built one of the world's first EHRs and kind of was the chair of HIMSS and CMIO at Harvard's health system and taught it all over the place. And then Devera Gabriel, and Devera's great. She's one of the world's leading clinical terminologists. So she did a lot of the work behind the rollout of ICD-11, and she runs terminology management for Johns Hopkins. So
if it's going to happen, it's got to be ridiculous, basically.
Well, yeah, I mean, Canada, that's, Guy and Enrico's kind of networks there, right? They've been in the space for 20 years.
Yeah.
Working in the guts of, kind of health informatics and health data. As a result, they build all these relationships. And then we kind of say, hey, we're going to try to turn this thing into something real. And everyone kind of hops on board, which is really nice.
Yeah. So this point around federation and federated data, tell me a little bit more about what that is and how that kind of works and the importance of it.
Why don't we hand that over?
The main thing is that when we think about medical data, and this is pretty intuitive, to think about privacy and to think about protecting patients' privacy and sort of not leaking information and that sort of thing. And then that's not a new thing. That's been around. There are different jurisdictions with different laws that govern this, cultural and just conventions. And these are sometimes hard to navigate, especially if you're trying to move data from one jurisdiction to another. Then you have to comply with all kinds of rules that might have contradictions in them sometimes. What people do is called federation, which is that they do a smaller version of a study in one location, take the results of that study, and the results from several other locations like that, and put those results together so that it's as if they have, without transferring any data across, there's a bigger population that's being studied. This process is actually lossy, so you lose the precision that's important there, compared to how you would do it to maximize precision, which is to take all the data, put it in one place, and then analyze it like that. That gives it that gives it the best we can do. When we do a federated study, we normally can't really get to that precision. We actually recently filed a patent that allows us to do just that, to actually, without transferring data, to get the same results we would have had if the data was all in one place. This will be a big changer now that a lot of people actually, I think one good thing that came out of the pandemic for us is that there's a lot of awareness. A lot of people want to study larger populations. There's a lot more awareness that federation is required. It's not just a convenience.
Yes. I mean, because people talk about it all the time too, especially when you're talking from my non-technical experience, but a common comment around artificial intelligence is a concern around bias and ensuring that it's appropriate, because like from a clinical point of view, if you're taking a sample size, from my own experience in the skin cancer side, taking a bunch of images of Australians, you're going to then create an algorithm that works very well for those that are living in Australia compared to then apply that to Africa. It's obviously very different. So, but then the concept of federation, how do you then take into consideration all these extra kind of bits and pieces that allow, if you're extrapolating just from one part, to actually make it applicable.
That's actually the advantage of federation, is why you do it, to increase the population. As you increase the population, the bias goes down. You get closer and closer to the sort of the truth. Being concerned about bias in machine learning is a little bit like being scared of telescopes because you can see meteorites in them, right? So they show us the biases that have already been there. They're not creating bias. They reflect it to us, the bias that was already there. So they learn the biases from us. The biases exist in the system. We can now see them. It's not that the machine learning, we might have put some responsibility on the machine learning and now it enacts some sort of, there's no judgment, no human judgment involved in that process. And that's a problem, I agree. But the biases were not created by the machine learning. They were learned. If you have more data that's more representative from multiple locations, that's actually reducing bias.
One of the interesting kind of benefits to broadly federated learning and analytics outside of AI is the idea that you can localize evidence now. So right now, studies are done in the United States, and they're based on a data set in the United States that says, this much Panadol is required for some guy with hypertension and type 2 diabetes to, post-surgery or post-minor surgery to alleviate pain or something like that. That study was done on that population. Those methods are reviewed and those methods are accepted as good, and so the result is accepted as correct. But if you can federate, you can apply that same method to a different patient population. And actually what matters are the methods, not the answer. Does that make sense? So suddenly all of the biases inherent in that population go away because you're applying those methods to a different, and the answer could be different. The answer could be, well, it's a lower dose or higher dose of Panadol for this patient population. And that's the type of thing that federation will allow us to do over time.
Yeah.
Does that?
It does. I'm reflecting on it, and I can tell that you guys think about this stuff way more than I do. We're just scratching the surface here. And I'm also thinking too how, you've mentioned a couple of times there's, for Evidentli, you've got some of your team members and advisory board are based in different parts of the world too. And we were talking before about how, you guys are on 24/7 because you're speaking to the US all the time and other parts. So this is obviously a global opportunity to solve here, not just from a bunch of Australians as well. Talk to me more about the needs globally when it comes to these kinds of solutions.
The idea of federation's been around for a while. Australia's probably a little bit behind in terms of its adoption, and there's a bunch of reasons for that. So the NHS just went to market for a national federated data platform, and they also have a national trusted research environment, which will be federated as well, meaning they need to standardize on a common data model across the entire country, the entire country's data set. This is of great interest in the United States amongst academic medical centers, and there are kind of research and learning communities being formed as we speak that really are kind of coalescing around a common data model so they can share and swap information or share and swap studies between them and kind of do research collaborations in real time. Whereas, before these things took years, and now they can do it they can do it much faster. Now, there a lot of technology and software needs to be developed to facilitate these interactions, but the acknowledgement that it's possible and it's the next wave of kind of building the learning health system and allowing the health system to learn at pace. It is really interesting because when you talk to, some academics that have been kind of thinking about this for a long time, this wave of knowledge that's going to be unleashed, by this type of network, they liken that to the impact of that. They liken that to the same impact that antibiotics and pharmaceuticals had on healthcare. Right, that's going to be the next big revolutionary thing, is how do we actually unlock this knowledge that's kind of latent in the health system and then apply it at scale. And that's the promise of.
Well, yeah, to that too. Like we, everything goes well, and then we speed up the process to convert to OMOP and do this. For what outcome then? Like, what's the benefit of all of this to spell out? We get all this right, what happens?
Yeah, so to learn at scale and to be able to apply these learnings. So to innovate quickly, to go from 17 years to get an answer to a clinical question, how much Panadol to give this person, who generally accept an answer to 17 weeks or 17 days. And ensuring things are actually, accepted and safe and safe for clinical practice.
Yeah. Increasingly, people are aware that there is gold in the data that they already collect. People from outside of informatics normally think, well, the data is already in a database. What's the problem? What do we need you for? People in the industry understand that data is not usable in the form that it's being collected for clinical care. That is actually a global problem for everyone that want to get at that gold, but they don't have any way to do it. It's not in a way that you can mine it. And so it's hard to say even what exactly is that gold going to do, right? What new knowledge is hiding in that data? We don't know until we look, but we can't yet look. So going backwards from that, one of the solutions was maybe if we standardized all the data, that would make it mineable. And that's correct. And that's where a lot of standards started, interoperability. But that shifts the problem in a way. It's part of the solution. It's not the whole solution. Yes. You need to get the data into the standard first. And that's where we are today, is that the only solution to do this is manual. So people are either doing this manually or not at all because it's too expensive. This is where we use AI to accelerate this and really make this possible. And then unrolling this, now the data is standardized. You can do a lot of things with it. You can mine it. You can federate it. You can start getting at that gold. And what we're finding is that there's so much to be mined. There's so much that not one company, not Google, not Apple, can actually do or solve medicine, right? Because medicine is thousands, if not millions, of small problems that need to be solved. We're providing a platform for the community to solve these problems on their own. We're not going to pretend to solve these problems ourselves. We provide them the tools they need, the data that they need, their data. We give it to them in a way that they can use it. They can then mine it and own those discoveries.
Because we talk so much about the algorithm, like so the ML creating additional algorithm, all this kind of thing. And you hear of different technology providers in healthcare that might do a lot of the algorithm side, but not any kind of interface for a clinician or a clinical code or anything. So is there an interface or something that do people, I'm asking the dumb questions for everyone here, do people log into Evidentli, or is it just the magic behind the scenes? What does the thing do?
No, I know there's a way for clinicians and an analytic kind of low code, no code portal, so they can kind of use this to create evidence or analytics really, really quickly.
Yeah.
So we provide kind of an end-to-end solution. So from messy data, we clean it up, we govern it, and we allow you to then do analytics and then collaborate.
Got it.
So that's kind of what it is we do.
But it's not not everyone who needs data needs to have these user interfaces. They make it accessible to a bigger audience, but it's not, there's statisticians and developers who need a more advanced, so we cater for them as well. So it's
a lot of stakeholders in healthcare. So there's
exactly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So then what's the future then? Of you guys a lot to work on and exciting problems to solve. What can we look forward to seeing from Evidentli over the next 6, 12, 24?
Well, domination.
That's what I was thinking.
We're expanding. So, and we're reaching, on word of mouth, you can only do so much, even with a big network like ours. And so we're investing in more commercial infrastructure and more collaboration between people we don't know. So we're building what we call an evidence hub, which is a collaboration hub for clinical data. So without sharing the data, it's sharing the methods where everybody in the public will be able to look at it, scrutinize it, which is how quality of evidence is determined, not by the results, how well they match what you wanted them to be, but how objectively were they produced. And so anybody can then go and look. Everything is open source and see how people have measured. So if you've published a paper that says that, I don't know, coffee cures cancer, people can actually go and look at the methods that you use without looking at your data, run it on their data to see is it really replicable, and build up the quality of the evidence this way. And so this is where this will come up towards the end of the year, and we're very excited about this. It's going to be very transformative.
Yeah, we have some partnerships with some large universities in the United States that are going to work with us on how we moderate communities and build communities of learning and knowledge from an open standpoint, open learning and knowledge around this kind of product.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be anything we charge for, right? It's just going to be there. We want people to use it. We want to create, we want healthcare to get better. And the best way to do that is by bringing people together with similar interests and passions and letting them solve problems in an open way.
And you think about, you're solving tricky problems that require, as you said, no one organization, person or anything is going to solve all the problems in healthcare. There's many stakeholders and many problems to solve. And if it's complicated, unless you have that understanding, the ability to share and ability to learn and grow, then it's not going to happen. But it sounds like you're doing a great job to make that more explainable and need that firepower behind it to get to that next level. So, gents, I'll put the details for Evidentli in the show notes of this episode. People can check out what you're doing and get in touch if they're keen to learn more. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
For more content and community about technology and healthcare, visit talkinghealthtech.com.